I knew something was wrong when I heard an explosion, which was about a minute into the flight. But I didn't think too much of it. I thought, I fly like you fly a lot. Planes lose engines, that happens, so you just go back and get into the plane. That's exactly what I was thinking until he crossed over, started approaching the George Washington Bridge in New York, and all of a sudden he says, "This is your captain, brace for impact." And that's the moment. Not only I think everybody, all the passengers at least on the plane knew that this is not going to probably end out pretty well because all you can see in front of you is water. And the only thing I can remember from a plane going into water is not good. So that's the moment I realized that this is probably not going to end up very well, and I better get some things straight really quick.
The Amber Mack Show on Canada Talks, Sirius XM 167.
Welcome to the Amber Mack Show. Coming up in today's episode, we talk about the rise of robots and my first time meeting one named Brian. We also discuss OpenAI, the creators of ChatGPT, and why it should concern you that they want to become the new operating system of the internet. Plus, one of the survivors of the Miracle on the Hudson joins us to talk about moments that matter. And Jeff, I am so excited for your segment this week where you're going to talk about the AI bubble that we're in and what all of this spending might mean to the average person.
Yeah, it's definitely a story that's going to keep on going, so we'll see how that works out. But we've got lots to discuss this episode. The AI space is moving forward more quickly than most people can keep up with, so we'll do our best to make all that make sense. But we're also going to talk about yet another self-driving Tesla fiasco. But let's get started with today's tech headlines.
Newsfeed.
OpenAI has been making deals left and right as it asserts its dominance in the AI industry, with previous partners including NVIDIA, Oracle, and CoreWeave recently being joined by chipmaker AMD in spending that has exceeded $1 trillion so far in 2025. And that's not the only partnering that CEO Sam Altman has been engaged in, announcing at OpenAI's recent Dev Day event that ChatGPT will add mini apps that will make OpenAI's chatbot a platform for even a wider variety of tasks.
Yeah, and these basically application connectors, they include popular products like Dropbox, Expedia, Gmail, Canva, Zillow, GitHub, and lots others. And they can handle requests related to those apps from inside the ChatGPT interface. So for the moment, some of these seem to be exclusive partnerships, and it's not clear what will happen in terms of competition in this new app space. But Altman has been talking a lot lately about needing to generate more revenue to try to recoup some more of OpenAI's costs. So I have to imagine that this is seen as a revenue generator, with services basically paying for the privilege to be part of those application connector suites.
Yeah, absolutely. I should mention I was just at an event called Elevate, Jeff, and someone from OpenAI was there, and he said, a lot of things keep me up at night. And I thought, oh, he's going to talk about kids and safety. This is going to be great. And the first thing he says is, I worry how OpenAI is going to make money. And so
Yep.
just wanted to share that. Fast Company has a really great article about this. It is behind a paywall if you've already read too many free articles, but you can check it out. It's called ChatGPT Wants to Be the New Operating System. Here's why that should worry us. One of the issues that the author raises is how using natural language as the default control mechanism means that many background decisions will happen invisibly, saying, and I'm quoting here from the article, who audits the logic behind your agent's choices? What data informs them? What economic incentives bias them? The more the interface simplifies, the more opaque the underlying process becomes. We've spent 2 decades complaining about algorithmic black boxes in search and social media. Now we're about to build one around every digital decision that we make.
That's just a fantastic way to put it. And it's like we've talked about trying to learn the lessons of social media as we go into AI, and nobody's trying to learn those lessons, at least not from the companies making these kind of products. But another great quote from Enrique Dans, who's the author of the article, is that, quote, "The more we outsource judgment to machines, the easier it becomes for those who own the machines to shape our behavior." And he actually closes that article with another great quote that is, "The world doesn't need another operating system that mediates access to everything. It needs transparency, interoperability, competition. And if we don't insist on them now, we may find ourselves living inside the most powerful black box ever built, one that doesn't just answer our questions, but quietly decides which ones we're allowed to ask. So lots in there to worry about, I'd say.
I'm excited, like I mentioned, that you're going to talk more about this in the other Mac that is coming up, where you'll talk about the AI bubble. But let's stick with OpenAI for now. Last week, we discussed their new Sora AI slop TikTok clone, which is exactly what it is. It hit a million downloads in less than 5 days, but it looks like there's been some sustained pushback from copyright holders.
Yeah, and I mean, so weird that Nickelodeon doesn't want, SpongeBob SquarePants to be cooking up crystal meth with his buddy Patrick under the ocean, or putting on a Nazi uniform when somebody requests a German SpongeBob and like half of them come out with Nazi uniforms in them. It's pretty crazy. OpenAI originally said that copyright holders had to opt out if they didn't want their intellectual property used in videos, which is just an astoundingly bold statement to make, given that most of the AI content is generated from training on illegally scraped materials. Anyway, OpenAI subsequently tweaked that requirement, so it became an opt-in policy where the copyright holder can also limit how their characters are used. So they don't want them to say this kind of thing or appear in these kind of situations. This, as one might imagine, angered users who want to make totally outrageous videos. I mean, that's what this thing is built for. But with as with so many of today's modern tech guardrails, the controls that OpenAI has put in place seem to be pretty easily to circumvent with a little bit of effort too.
What I don't understand is how Sam Altman seems surprised by all of this. I think this is something that many of us would have expected would actually happen. And this is pretty consistent big tech behavior to do something that's obviously going to be a problem and then ask for forgiveness and promise you'll do better in the future. I think this is something we've been reporting a lot on. And I mean, it's just shocking. I don't know if they live in a bubble or if they're just lying because it's absolutely atrocious. Now, looking to the other side of the world, we've got some more evidence of how AI is not ready for some of what it's being asked to do, with Deloitte Australia having to offer a partial refund to the Australian government for almost $300,000 US that the report contained. You could guess this right away. A lot of AI hallucinations.
Wow, AI hallucinations. I never heard of that before. I don't get how professionals can think that they can just let AI do their jobs without ever performing their own due diligence to make sure that what has been created is accurate. It's happens all the time. Lawyers, Deloitte, all this, you read about it almost every day. But this Targeted Compliance Framework Assurance Review, very exciting report name, had the now all too common hallucinated references to papers that don't exist. It looks like there might have been around 14 of those because they were subsequently removed, as well as imaginary quotes and other issues like that. In response to the claim that, well, that's okay because the report's conclusions are still sound, so no harm done, really, Sydney University's Deputy Director of Health Law, Chris Rudge, said, "You cannot trust the recommendations when the very foundation of the report is built on a flawed, originally undisclosed, and non-expert methodology. Deloitte has admitted to using generative AI for a core analytical task, but it failed to even disclose this in the first place. And, frankly, this is just another entirely predictable result of AI giants overpromising and underdelivering. So organizations using AI just have to smarten up to this reality. And, you just got to do your job. You got to do your due diligence. These are not meant to be used without any oversight. So do better, everyone involved, frankly.
Before we get into our next story, I just want to ask you a quick follow up on this because one of the things that shocked me about this story is that they didn't use another chatbot to run the report through, which would have identified potential hallucinations by doing a fact check. So to me, it's sloppy all around.
Yeah, exactly. It's fair enough. This stuff is what now 2, 3 years old, kind of thing. And everyone's still learning, but that's a $300,000 project, was it? It's a gigantic project. It's not the type of thing that you can go, well, I'll just throw it in AI and see what comes out. So yeah, we're definitely still in a learning process about that. But as I said, it's on all sides. The AI companies need to do better, need to stop overrepresenting what they can do. But the people using AI have to realize that, hey, the magical artificial general intelligence that you've been promised, it's not here yet. You still have to do your work. So,
Yeah.
yeah, do better, guys.
Yeah, do better. Speaking of doing better, speaking of things that don't work as advertised, Tesla is under investigation by the U.S. National Highway Traffic Safety Administration yet again about its full self driving tech, this time over almost 60 reports of Tesla vehicles using full self driving mode and driving on the wrong side of the road, running red lights, and taking other illegal actions that in some cases resulted in injuries and collisions, unsurprisingly, with other cars.
Yeah, and this is all still happening in the face of Musk saying that by the end of 2026, and I quote, we'll probably have hundreds of thousands, if not over a million Teslas doing self-driving in the US, and adding that by then passengers won't even have to pay attention at all, noting, quote, like you're asleep and you wake up at your destination. It should be noted that that is completely the opposite of what Tesla says when they've been brought to court over the full self-driving. They say, no, of course you have to watch it. So again, these guys just gave this Elon Musk $1 trillion pay package, and I don't get where the value comes from anymore. I think this is doing more harm than good to have him involved.
Absolutely. And speaking of robo taxis, DoorDash is teaming up with Serve Robotics to bring sidewalk delivery bots to Los Angeles before expanding to programs across the U.S. This will be in addition to DoorDash's own Dot delivery bots, which can also function on roads as well as sidewalks. I do want to mention that I've been doing a lot of events over the past few weeks, and I was at an event recently, and someone from Serve Robotics was speaking there, and I did meet a robot from there, Jeff, named Brian, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. It was pretty interesting to say the least. What do you think about all of this in terms of these delivery robots?
I have two issues with this. First of all, and excuse the anecdotal evidence, but we've got a McDonald's about 3 blocks away from our house here in Halifax, and I see DoorDash and Uber Eats and other food services doing deliveries from there to students living across the street from us, who I'm sure those students quite regularly complain about the cost of living. So I feel this is yet another instance where essentially, sorry, but lazy people make things expensive for the rest of us who can do things like, walk a few blocks to pick up our own food. Putting that aside, secondly, and I think much, much more importantly, uh, you've seen all the DoorDash and Uber Eats bikes in Toronto basically taking over the bike lanes downtown, or that's been my experience. Well, what are we going to do when robots the size of small grocery carts start making sidewalks more difficult to use, especially, for people with vision difficulties or people with mobility difficulties or even just families with children in tow? Maybe they're less likely to kill somebody than a Tesla, but is that really how low we want to put the bar?
I think it's a really good point. In Toronto, we have experimented a little bit with some of these delivery robots. It did not go well. I believe one of the pilot projects, I think it was called Tiny Mile, it was canceled pretty quickly. And many of the issues that you talked about, they were issues when you got these robots on the roads or on the sidewalks, I should say. But Jeff, I kind of agree with you. I think the only place that these really work is in a community or in an environment where there is designated space for them. Like I'm thinking of a college campus, right? In a rural area where they may actually have room for some of these robots. Maybe there are newer communities and cities where they can actually create space for some of these robots. But if we think about some of our older cities, Halifax is a great example. I mean, I rented an e-bike when I was there, and it was hard even to drive an e-bike around that city of pretty narrow streets.
Yeah.
So I think you're exactly right that when it comes to some of these delivery robots, our cities just aren't designed for them. As much as I like this technology, I think it could be useful to a lot of people, but I just don't know how it fits within many of our cities. So I think
And
that's a big issue.
I'd also add to that, and I don't know what the situation is because I actually looked this up relative to e-bike and e-scooter rentals, which I a little bit chafe at because of the use of public property and the issues around that. We pay taxes to develop our streets and sidewalks and all this sort of stuff. They're for us, not robots. So I don't know how the powers that be in these municipal situations let this stuff happen without, like, maybe they're bringing in a bunch of money from it. Maybe that helps to pay for other services. If that's the case, then fine. Let's hope that money goes to a good place. But it seems to be businesses taking advantage of public infrastructure without suitable, like, compensation back to the people who pay for it.
Yeah, I will just say, you're saying all this, but if you met Brian, he was pretty cute, Jeff. Great companion on the sidewalk. I'm sure we'll talk about robots more in the future, but now we're going to switch our focus a little bit and return to that story on the AI bubble that we're in and why there are increasing numbers of people worried about it bursting. That's coming up next in The Other Mac.
The Other Mac.
Well, we've talked about the extraordinary amounts of money being invested in AI many times on the Amber Mac Show, and the increasing detachment between AI hype and what AI is actually delivering has made people as unlikely as OpenAI's CEO Sam Altman speculate that AI is in a bubble. Well, now both the International Monetary Fund and the Bank of England are warning that the enormous AI valuations and overwrought stock prices won't last forever, and that they expect the bubble to burst sooner rather than later. The potential effects of a burst could be disastrous, and if you remember the 2000 dot-com bubble bursting, you may recall that the NASDAQ fell almost 80%, and it took 15 years to return to 2000 levels. One part of the concern is the risky nature of some circular deals like the ones AI has been making with NVIDIA and AMD, whereby NVIDIA invests in OpenAI, knowing that those investment dollars will be returned to NVIDIA's pockets when OpenAI buys gear from NVIDIA. And then NVIDIA will then take that money to reinvest in OpenAI, who will then buy more gear from NVIDIA, and so on and so on. NBC News described an even broader circular deal that's going on here, where NVIDIA plans to invest in OpenAI, which is buying cloud computing from Oracle, which is buying chips from NVIDIA, which has a stake in CoreWeave, which is providing artificial intelligence infrastructure to OpenAI. So the problem is these kinds of deals can distort the values of companies involved by making it look like the individual companies are experiencing growth when they're really just handing the same money around in a circle. And this creates big risks that can cascade disastrously with the failure of any company in that chain. If we look at the broader AI picture, over 1/3 of the market value of S&P 500 companies comes from what Wall Street calls the Magnificent Seven. These are Apple, Alphabet, Amazon, Meta, Microsoft, NVIDIA, and Tesla. And guess what? Every single solitary one of those is deeply invested in AI. So if there's a loss of confidence in AI investments, then there can be enormous impacts on the market. Indeed, we recently covered how the US economy outside of AI investments is essentially in recession, and that AI investments now outstrip the entirety of consumer spending in value. So we're going full on Kenny Loggins into the danger zone on this as far as I'm concerned. But let's take a look at what AI is actually achieving, especially in enterprise. You've heard of AI slop. Well, work slop is the version of that inside companies where AI-generated work consumes a lot of resources, but doesn't necessarily produce anything particularly useful. And the Toronto Star had a great article on this, noting that Harvard and Stanford University researchers pointed out that top AI products that businesses have paid large sums of money for end up actually reducing the productivity of those companies because of the preponderance of work slop. And beyond that, S&P Global reported that 42% of companies they surveyed who tried AI pilot projects have abandoned most of them. And then on top of this, an MIT study published in August found that 95% of organizations in their study who had invested in AI had achieved no return on those investments. 95% of companies spending lots of money and achieving no return is not a recipe for success. But hey, those AI companies need that training data, so they have to keep making big promises in order to continue their progress. So they're trapped in a circle there as well. Some people inside the industry certainly seem to be enjoying a bit of rose colored glasses around this. Google's ex CEO Eric Schmidt, when asked about the AI bubble, said, quote, "I don't think that's going to happen here, but I'm not a professional investor. What I do know is that the people who are investing hard-earned dollars believe the economic return over a long period of time is enormous. Why else would they take the risks?" Well, that's all well and good, but let's pair that with Mark Zuckerberg's recent declaration that he'd rather misspend a couple of $100 billion than to not be competitive in the race for AI. And then let me ask you, does that sound like somebody deciding what they want to do with their hard-earned dollars? Or does it just sound like people with more money than they know what to do with, putting the rest of us at risk so they can pursue a questionable sci-fi dream that might never become reality?
The Amber Mac Show on Canada Talks, Sirius XM 167.
Dave Sanderson is a globally recognized leadership speaker, author, and a survivor of the Miracle on the Hudson, where he served as the last passenger off U.S. Airways Flight 1549, the flight that safely crash-landed in the Hudson River in 2009. He joined Amber to discuss the leadership lessons he learned during this crisis and how it led him to launch a new magazine called Moments Matter just this year.
Dave, your magazine is called Moments Matter. And when I heard the title of this magazine, I thought about the moment you must have had when your plane crashed on the Hudson River. In a miracle, really, that so many lives were saved, everybody on the plane. So take me back to that moment on the plane when you knew something was wrong.
Thank you, Amber. And yes, I knew something was wrong when I heard an explosion, which was about a minute into the flight. But I didn't think too much of it. I thought, I fly like you fly a lot. Planes lose engines. That happens. So you just go back and get into the plane. That's exactly what I was thinking until he crossed over, started approaching the George Washington Bridge in New York. And all of a sudden he says, "This is your captain, brace for impact." And that's the moment. Not only I think everybody, all the passengers, at least on the plane, knew that this is not going to probably end out pretty well because all you can see in front of you is water. And the only thing I can remember from a plane going into water is not good. So that's the moment I realized that this is probably not going to end up very well, and I better get some things straight really quick.
We've all heard the story of what actually happened. You're the first person I've ever spoken to who was actually on that plane. I can imagine there were many moments where you saw leaders among all the passengers and the crew and people who really took charge. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of leadership in that moment?
Yeah, I think that's exactly one of the reasons I think this ended up the way it did because it wasn't just the crew; they did a fabulous job. I'm forever grateful, but other people had to step up because one of the things you learn when you go through a situation like this is the people who give the most certainty in those uncertain times are the ones that become leaders. It doesn't matter if I tell people it doesn't matter if you're the CEO of a company or if you're a janitor. If you give certainty to somebody when in that uncertain time, they're going to look to you to follow. To follow. So, I think that happened on a number of fronts. Not only with myself, but some other people likewise. That we were, when you stay calm, and when my first principle I talk about is calm and chaos. You got to keep your head, and I think the people who kept their heads and could give clear directions to people when they needed it were the leaders on that plane. And I know of a couple that I know personally that handled things extremely well, and hopefully I did the same thing.
What was your role during that
Yeah,
time? Because I imagine every single person on board that plane did serve some type of role during those moments and the rescue as
yeah,
well.
yeah. My game plan, Amber, because I played athletics and sports, was I always had a game plan was aisle up out. If I survived, I got to get to the aisle, get up and get out the door. That was my game plan. But, what changed for me is when I got to the aisle, I executed step number one. But I heard my mom start speaking to me. And, one of the things my mom would tell me when I was a child is if you do the right thing, God will take care of you. And I grew up outside a small town outside of Cincinnati, Ohio, where everybody took care of everybody. Everybody knew everybody. So I went towards the back of the plane to see if anybody needed help. I climbed over the seats, got behind the last person, and things were moving pretty quick in the back of the plane. But the water was chest level deep because the back of the plane was actually submerged. And a lot of people don't know that because they see the front of the plane view, they don't see the side of the plane view. So the water was extremely deep. So, and people say, "Well, why were you managing the right door?" Where was the crew? Well, the flight attendant who was supposed to manage that door had her leg sliced because a piece of metal came up from underneath the plane during the impact. So they took her out the front. So I managed the right door, and I was inside the plane for over 7 minutes, waist deep in 36-degree water, because somebody needed to manage what was going on the side. And as you know, my background with, I had some leadership roles with Tony Robbins and other people. I was sort of just took it upon myself to say, at least I'm okay. I can at least hopefully give direction and do something. So that's how I stepped up and handled the right door, which was a 10F on the right side of the plane.
What happens in the days after the crash?
Yeah.
Because again, we hear a lot about the moment that people knew something was wrong. We hear about the moment that people were rescued, but then all of a sudden, you don't hear about the stories about the days after, because that must have also been a really difficult experience for a lot of people.
I'm glad you asked that question 'cause very rarely does anybody want ever ask that. And the next day when I got back, things were very hectic, right? I mean, it's and you get to the airport and you're at the airport now, media is coming at you, nonstop, and now you're just trying to get back to normal life. But for me, my daughter had a varsity basketball game that night. So we were just going to go to the game, and when we got to the game, CBS showed up at the game to follow me. And it was like chaos, right? I mean, here I am just trying to be with my family, trying to get some sense of normalcy, and all of a sudden, I got CBS following me all over town. And so it was like that for a couple of weeks. I was getting constantly, called about that, and I was trying to do my job, because I was asked to go to Michigan the next week. I didn't get any time off, and I still had my family because the family was going through their thing. See, a lot of people forget about the families. All the families went through their whole all traumatic experience likewise, and you got the media, so it was very chaotic for a number of months for me, and I think for a lot of passengers, they had a very similar situation. Some just regressed, and one of the things I think that their companies did really well is they gave them time off so they could regress. My company asked me to go to Michigan the next week, so I was back in the fray within 48 hours.
I have a lot of comments about that because that seems grossly unfair. But I do want to say that you kind of turn that experience into something different. You're no longer at that
That's
company.
right.
You started speaking. We met quite a few years ago here in Toronto. You started speaking about leadership and that experience. So, how did you turn what was such a traumatic experience into, I think, what can be defined as an opportunity to share with thousands of people? How did you actually make that switch?
It wasn't my game plan. It really wasn't the game plan, but I'll tell you, here's the backstory. So the only person, Amber, that called me that night in the hospital was Tony Robbins. It wasn't my manager. It wasn't anybody from the company. They didn't even call my wife. It was him. And and if you go out on YouTube, you can actually see it. He did a YouTube about that interview we did. But the last thing we got off, he said, "Listen, when you get to LA, call me. I want to talk to you." So I was going to LA for all these TV shows, Dr. Phil and all these shows, and so I called him, and we spent 3 hours on the phone. Now, if someone's willing to give you 3 hours on the phone, right? That's a lot of time, especially someone of that, but he was giving me the life lessons, tell me expectations of what I should be expecting, but he also said, "It's time to step into it. This is your opportunity. Go for it," right? "You have a story to tell now, and don't waste this opportunity." But how do you do it, right? And so that's what I had to figure out, but I knew based on what happened I just referenced, because when I got back to Charlotte on the 16th of January, I went by the office because I didn't even know they knew I was in a plane crash. I was on company time, and when I went in, I had these sweats on because I lost all my clothes and everything else. So I just I let everybody know I survived, and my first thing my manager said, "You're going to Michigan next week, right?" And 2 of my kids were with me, and my girls were looking like, "Dad, what are you gonna do?" I'm like, "I'm going to Michigan next week." And that's when I knew, Amber, that I didn't have what's called the 4 freedoms. I didn't have freedom of time, money, mission, or relationships. And I knew I had to make a move, and then Tony reinforced that, right? So that's how it really started. Yeah, I started speaking, at the churches and things, so that's all I knew until I had a big experience at a very large event, and all of a sudden, that's how I sort of figured out I've got a message to tell, and I need to do this in a bigger way.
I do want to say, just full disclosure, that
Yeah.
you and I both share experiences working with Tony Robbins. And he also showed up at a really interesting time in my life where totally different.
Yeah.
But I was working in a job where I didn't feel I had any of those freedoms that you
Yeah.
mentioned. And I felt kind of trapped, right? And I started working with him, and he gave me a great opportunity for my now partner, Chris, and I to come and do some work for him and travel. And he kind of shows up at the right time.
Yeah.
So,
It's amazing
uh,
how that works, isn't it? Just the right
yeah,
person shows up.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. So, from that point, when you start
Yeah.
speaking about leadership to audiences, I'm so curious about this because I've been speaking for a long time. But my talk, I think, is not a highly emotional talk. I'm talking about technology in the future, and it's a little bit detached from the human experience in some respects. What you're talking about, I think, is a different conversation. What was it like going to audiences and answering those questions and kind of rehashing what was obviously a very traumatic experience over and over again?
Yeah, I tell you, I often would get very emotional because it would trigger something, right? I would get triggered, and but what I realized is people really want the question. And I go back. This is the question I still get 16 years later. I started day two all the way now is how'd you get back on a plane? And what I realized what people are asking, Amber, is how did you bounce back? How did you do it? Because so many
Mm,
people are going through uncertainty. How did you lead yourself to be able to do something like that, right? Because one of the secrets about this whole thing is many people from that day still haven't got back on a plane.
yeah.
And, I don't blame them for it. They had to do what they have to do. But I think that's the biggest question people always wanted to find out from me is, how did you do it? How did you bounce back? And then turn it into something that now you're around the world and doing your things and helping other people do it. And I think that's really the big question people want answered is because everybody's going through uncertainty.
So, what do you say to people when they ask you that question?
I say, there's a lot of, and I actually did my TED talk at Queen's University up in Kingston about this. I had four universities come to me. I said I wanted to do it in Canada because number one, when I heard the suicide rate in Canada was out of control, it's the same time I was hearing about the suicide rate in the U.S. military. I'm like, I was like appalled. Like, how's this going on? So I really want to share some of the strategies that I did and how did bounce back and how did I turn it around. And, one of the ways is about the meaning you attach to something produces the emotion of your life. And I want to help people understand whatever meaning you're attaching is how you're feeling right now. So if I can help you change or reframe that meaning, then I can help you change the direction of your life. But one of the first things that I did, and this is actually the reason I started speaking, and it goes back to our friend Tony Robbins, because one of the things Tony told me in this 3-hour conversation, and this is one of the things he does on stage, so it's nothing private, uh, is that one of the things he does extremely well is help people get out of their body. See, a lot of people, unfortunately, when they go through a challenging situation, is they keep talking in their head. Their internal dialogue just keeps knocking them down and stack, 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 stack. So it gets so deep they can't do anything about it. So the one strategy that he taught me and I've done and I help other people with is let's get it out of your body. Just get it out. So I started speaking to get it out of my body. And what I was noticing is every time I did it, not only did I affect people, but it helped me grow likewise. It helped me be able to have more certainty to be able to say, you know what, I can do this, and gave me certainty to do it. So I think that those are really the two key steps I share people first on how number one, you can turn it around, but second, how you can start leading yourself first, because you got to lead yourself first because no one will buy into you unless you give them certainty.
It is also true that when you speak about certainty, I think the world has changed so much, even since that time. We're talking 16 years, and we've gone through a pandemic, another experience where people were forced to deal with uncertainty in their lives. Right now, I think it's true to say, and this kind of comes back a little bit to the work I do and some of the things that we talk about on this show. Artificial intelligence is impacting people in a significant way. People are turning to their phones. They're losing human contact. I mean, there's some good things that tech is doing, and I certainly talk about those. Some bad things as well. What do you think about this moment in time
Yeah.
that we're in right now?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think the biggest question right now is how's AI going to affect everybody, right? How's it going to why A do I need to use it? And B, how's it going to affect? And like you, I was sort of seeing this trend and I was in technology for 38 years. And I know the companies that I were with, it all shifted that direction right now, right? So, uh, I always go back to the one thing that always I did well at, I think, and I developed a strategy that all of a sudden I just realized how to do it. It was I call it the 8I strategy, access to influence. And all I really did is take the AI acronym and how I used back then, it was not AI, maybe it was, I didn't even know what I was using, but getting information through that to be able to get access to build influence with somebody. Because it always comes back to what we talked about a little before, is authentic interactions. How you have to, because people still buy from people. People still deal with people. And a lot of these companies that I talk to, like you probably interview likewise, they move to AI agents and things like that because they think they can reduce costs, but give better customer service and all this. And maybe it's true. But I think, and I don't know about you, but when I have a question I want to answer, I want to talk to somebody, right? I don't want to talk to an AI agent because they'll go through whatever they do, go through their list of things. But if I get to somebody's heart, it's like, I need help. Then I think it really always comes back to authentic interactions.
It is interesting too that in this day and age of social media, you're publishing a magazine.
Yeah.
I love print as a format. I think it's really powerful. But I would love to hear a little bit more about why you decided that was right for you right now.
Thank you for that. I never thought I'd be a publisher of a magazine. I'm not Oprah. I'm not, Joanna Gaines. I tell people I'm not somebody big that's going to be in Walmart with thousands of magazines. But what I realized is I did a podcast for a year, Amber, and every week for a year, and I did it all myself. And it was a lot of work. I mean, there's a lot of work to do, especially by yourself. So I sunsetted that. So I didn't really have any media going on. And someone approached me and shared with me a strategy on how I could use magazines as a medium to get to people and help have other people share their story, their Moments Matter stories. But how do you do it? And I said, well, he said, well, why don't you try a magazine? Do people still read magazines? I said, I still read magazines, but I'm in my 60s. I grew up in magazines, right? So what I realized is people love magazines. They can either download or they love that touch of a magazine and the look of a magazine. So I started this magazine to really first just share some of my stories, but I've realized is I can share other people's moment stories on how they got to where they're at and really impact people. And all of a sudden we're getting people all over the world reading this magazine. So I actually instead I'm using it in not a replacement of a podcast, but sort of in relation to a podcast, whereas this is my medium that I'm using, where other people are using a podcast or internet radio. So that's how it really came about. And now we're in our third year, and I'm so honored that you're in our summer edition of a Moments Matter magazine because it's as I shared with you earlier, the editor of my magazine said right now your articles are tapping into a lot more people than some of the other folks. So thank you for your contribution.
Well, I am very happy to be part of it and really appreciate you including me as well. I wanted to ask, looking forward,
Yep.
because you've done so much work out there talking about leadership and helping people through these challenging times, getting people to think about those moments that matter. I don't think your story ever gets old. First of all,
Yeah.
you survived something that I think makes you very unique. Most people have not gone through an experience like that. Secondly, a lot of people are afraid of flying. I mean, that's
Yeah.
just a reality of our time, myself included. I wouldn't say it's my absolute favorite thing to do. When you look forward and you think about the evolution of some of your work, where do you want to take things?
Yeah, thank you very much. Because one of the things that's exactly what we're doing right now is how can we impact more people, not only with the story. The story is a story, but yeah, how can I use how I did this to impact other people so they can become an entrepreneur or do something what we talked about earlier, have those four freedoms: freedom of time, money, mission, and relationships. And what that really means is I think everybody wants those four freedoms. I think everybody wants that. And the question is, how do you get there? How do you do that? And I just figured out it took me 3 years. I'm not gonna say it was an overnight sensation. It took me about 3 years to figure out the strategy on how to do that. So I did that. So the direction we're taking the company now is really how to scale your business and or life to get these four freedoms. And I've built a framework, and basically I just put all these pieces together that I've learned to a framework on how I did it. And that's what we're going to be teaching at our upcoming summit in Charlotte in November 12th through the 15th is for the first time, I'm going to share this framework on how you can not only get to freedoms, but how to really scale your life and business to be able to do this in this way. And so I'm really excited to do this in the direction of the company. And one of the things that I've learned through my life and is, to really be able to grow and be able to impact, you got to simplify. So we're simplifying everything we're doing right now. We've gotten rid of a lot of things we have been doing. So you know what? This is all we're going to be doing now is helping people who want to have those freedoms, show them a framework how to do it, how to scale and to do it effectively. And that's the direction we're taking.
I think one of the things I really love about your work is that I think a lot of people miss moments that matter in their lives. And when I say they don't see them as opportunities to learn, they see them in, little boxes of maybe just pain
Yep.
or, something that isn't necessarily a lesson. How do people look at these moments in their lives? Differently to be able to use them to kind of move them forward.
Thank you. I think one of the things I realized after the miracle on the Hudson is that every moment in your life is there for a reason and a purpose. Everyone is. And you may just gloss over it, and a lot of us do. I mean, I glossed over it, but let's look at your situation. When as we looked at your article, in Moments Matter magazine, you were doing, outside doing work at 8 years old that no one would ever really want to do. That moment influenced you. Now, at that moment, you're probably saying, "I really don't want to do this. It's horrible. I hate it." But that influenced you in a direction. So what I realized and what I help other people realize is that situation that was really hard in your life, something happened, was there to help build your strength, help you build your what I call resilience, right? To be able to bounce back and be able to get it done. So don't take these moments lightly. And one of the things I think you and I shared a little earlier is, when if someone gives you their time and to be able and they want to share something with you, don't discard it. It may not impact you right now, but 10, 15 years now, all of a sudden you're thinking, maybe that was there for this reason right here. And I shared an experience when I was 12 years old that impacted me that day on the Miracle on the Hudson. And if that hadn't happened to me when I was 12, I may not have been able to do what I was done. And what happened is my mom and dad made me learn how to swim. But that was one skill that I had, was great. But when I was 12, I was in the Boy Scouts and we had to do something and we had to get across a river to get to the next activity to do it. And yeah, most of the guys and were walking over the bridge, but few of us just jumped in the river and swam because we could. And I said, was that the moment? I look back, so was that the moment it gave me the certainty to had on the Miracle on the Hudson Day where I had to swim for my life? That knew I already swam in the river once. So I could have certainty that I could do it again. And I said, that was a key moment when I was 12. But who would ever thought about that one moment in Boy Scouts, that was going to serve me. So I tell people, don't gloss over it. This moment happened, and you may not like it happen, may not like the way it happened, but it'll serve you somewhere in your life.
Absolutely. And I have to apologize because I didn't realize that there was swimming involved in this rescue. I think a lot of people thought, okay, the plane landed and people got off onto boats, but
No,
that
I had to
wasn't the
swim for
case.
my life. I had to because the plane was sinking. So I jumped in and swam to the end of the wing. And I tell people I was the longest 15-yard swim of my life because the water was 36 degrees. I was fully clothed. And one thing that people don't know, and I do share, is they had jet fuels in the water. And that's why I wear glasses. Because when I got back, I was having trouble seeing. Went to the optometrist and he found black spots all through my eyes. He thinks I got jet fuel stuck back in there, which cost something. He gave me glasses. So those little things like that happen, people don't even realize. But you know, but you do what you have to do when your life's on the line, right? You just have to do what you got to do.
Absolutely. I just want to thank you for joining me today and sharing that story and sharing the work that you're also doing today. But for people who want to read more and follow you, where is the best place for them to go?
Well, first, I love them to go to LinkedIn because this is where we really share our new content every week. Dave Sanderson on LinkedIn, but really just one of the things that I do is if you want to read Amber's story and the other people's stories, go to my website, davesandersonspeaks.com. Go to where it says books and magazines, and you can download a free copy right now of the magazine. And I would encourage you to do that because what you're going to find, you'll probably find somebody you can relate to very quickly to someone's maybe got a very similar backstory that you have and say, you know what, this person was able to accomplish this and this is how they did it. And this was a moment trigger. Maybe I can do it too. And I'll give you a quick example. I interviewed a lady, she's from Vietnam and I met her through my connections with the military. I do a lot with the special operations in the United States. But long story short, her family was, basically flown out of Vietnam during the war. They went to a camp. They put them in a camp. But the key thing about that story is her mom had no money. Her dad was fighting the Viet Cong over in Vietnam, but there was a lady who took interest in her. Her name was Hedy Lamarr. She was a Hollywood star, and she showed her mother how to do nails. And her mother opened a salon in Los Angeles, which then grew, which gave Van, her name is Van Delon, the inspiration as a young Vietnamese girl to be an entrepreneur and start her own thing. So these are the stories you don't know about, which, you know what? I think everybody's got something in their backstory that maybe they need to maybe just sort of say, you know what, I can do that too. And so I'd encourage them to go to DaveSandersonSpeaks.com and check out, and especially Amber's article. I'm really proud of her article, and it looks great in the magazine. FYI, the pictures look outstanding. So
Excellent. Well, I again really appreciate you taking the time. And I think in this age of technology and artificial intelligence, work that you're doing is especially important. We all have to learn how to lead during this challenging time. We all have to lean into authenticity, really excel as humans, especially alongside some of these machines that are coming into our personal and work lives. So really appreciate you taking the time. Thank you so much.
thank you, Amber.
Thanks, Dave and Amber. Coming up, Amber has a report about what it means to be a frontier firm from Microsoft's recent AI tour.
You're listening to The Amber Mac Show on Canada Talks, Sirius XM 167.
Microsoft recently hosted an event in Toronto to share more on the company's move into agentic AI and what it means to be a frontier firm. Here's Amber's report from the event.
I'm Amber Mack. I'm here at Microsoft AI Tour Toronto. There are thousands of people here, and I am so excited to learn what it takes to succeed on your AI journey.
The first thing I learned this morning is what it means to be a frontier firm. Microsoft defines a frontier firm as a next-generation company where humans and AI agents work together to get things done faster, smarter, and better. Microsoft Canada President Matt Milton spoke more about this topic in his keynote on the AI opportunity for Canadian leaders. Matt joined me on the showroom floor to share more.
There are a lot of business leaders right now who are really struggling during this time. What would you say to them in terms of how they can start their AI journey?
Yeah, I'd say three things. One, you're not alone. Everybody's trying to figure it out. Two, what used to be fact may no longer be fact. So what you thought you knew about it a week ago, it's probably different now. The third, just get your hands on it. Play with it, work with it, build agents. It's super intuitive. It's super easy to use. Just roll around with it and you'll be amazed at what you can do.
Another highlight of the morning was the panel session on AI in education, which focused on the importance of communicating the purpose behind the AI journey. The question of why to embrace AI came up again with Dr. Lynn Mikula, President and CEO of Peterborough Regional Health Centre.
So in healthcare, we're all overwhelmed. We're so busy all the time. We're really looking at AI as a way to help our staff do a way better job of allocating their time to patients and to that human interaction.
After speaking with Dr. Mikula about AI in healthcare, I spent some time on the showroom floor listening to product demos, learning more about the next wave of AI tools. I also spoke with David Arrowsmith, VP of Business Solutions at First West Credit Union.
For us, some of our greatest success stories are those AI aha moments that our team members have had as they discover themselves what generative AI can do and how it can help them either be more productive or be more efficient, or help them get answers even more quickly to our members because that information comes to their fingertips through generative AI. That's been a real game changer for us.
I was really excited in your keynote because you talked about Canadian ambition. It's a really exciting moment in time right now.
It is a very exciting moment in time for a lot of different reasons, and I think Canada's proven what they will do with this kind of technology. You talk about the numbers, $187 billion a year that it's going to add to the Canadian economy. I think more importantly, though, now is the time that Canada can shape what we want AI to be for Canadians, not when someone else wants it to be.
To get more information about how to lead during this AI shift, you can check out the Microsoft AI Decision Brief online. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, Amber, and thanks to Microsoft Canada for supporting this episode, and thanks to all of you for tuning in. As always, you can find us across social media and keep sharing links to our show. We really appreciate the support. Have a great week, and we'll see you soon.
You're listening to The Amber Mac Show on Canada Talks, Sirius XM 167.